Roxanne?
I am indeed. Hello.
Hello, and now are you joining us by video or are you on telephone?
I am. I'm just trying to get it to work.
All right, we'll click where it says start video, I think.
Yeah, no, that's what I've been doing. For some reason the video's not going to work.
All right, okay. Well, keep...
I've been talking to your guy, so...
All right, so... All right, well, let's get on. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. We're a bit late in starting, but I'm keen not to rush people too much, so I'll do the official part. So,
sure.
for the Hansard record, if you could please state your name and the capacity in which you will appear today.
Roxanne Mysko, and I'm here representing United Transport Group.
Wonderful. Now, Roxy, it should come as no shock to the committee or other people listening in that you and I know each other very well.
Yes.
We have a number of conversations, and it's just unfortunate we couldn't get down there physically today in Adelaide, which it's frustrated Senator McDonald and myself no end. So anyway, I'm going to ask you now, Roxy, to make an opening statement, and this is your chance to tell us everything that you want to get on the record that we should hear, and then we'll go to questions. And I'm joined by Senator Susan McDonald as well. So Roxy, fire away.
Thank you. Hi. Firstly, thanks, Glenn, for inviting me to be on here, and hello, Senator Susan McDonald. Nice to meet you. Sorry you can't see me. I don't know what's going on here. My representation of United Transport Group, we're a national association, we're very new. So my format for my presentation is an opening, then hopping into all the issues and covering off the term of reference, and then a closing. And I've got a number of issues that I would like to bring to the table. So who is UTG? We're actually only about a month or two old. We're a national group who work, we have about 10 of us in our team. We have people all across Australia. We have certainly got at least half our team that drive trucks and road trains ourselves, and some other people in our team who work in universities, head of faculty for road safety and researchers, and two of us actually are ex-RMS, so ex-regulators. We've worked across the platform as regulators with industry for over 3 million journeys, so we've got a pretty good handle on what that means. I personally was a part of the CEO mock trials for the new legislation, and so I can speak very comfortably on that once I get to that topic. Our team is actually very passionate. We intend on disrupting in a positive way, because we do believe that there is so many issues in industry, and we really do represent that 80% of the grassroots that haven't had a voice. And we feel that it's very broken for them, and fatigue is one of the big topics I'll be covering. But also I'd like to give a strong acknowledgement to all the people that actually do work in the industry. And I've been in the industry all my life. My father was a long distance road train operator. I drive triple and double road trains myself, and I've worked over in Canberra in government and across different jurisdictions for 15 years. So we feel fairly strong that we have a lot to bring to the table to represent industry with government moving forward. The acknowledgement that I'd really like to pay here is that I'm quite shattered at the number of fatalities that are occurring in our industry. And in the last 2 years, horrifying to see that the fatalities has risen over 50%. Nobody deserves to actually have that knock on the door to say that their family or friends not coming home. We feel as an organisation, a not-for-profit, that the industry has actually lost its way, in short, and it hasn't actually listened to that grassroots, and it has certainly been listening to that top high-level operators or the big players in the game. So I'll kick off into what we think are the core issues in industry, and we certainly have solutions, and we've certainly been doing surveys with all of the industry sector, not just our members. So COR, I'm a firm believer, having been in the mock trials and been doing audits across the country for the last 10 years in organisations, done investigations with fatalities and road accidents. I'm a firm believer it's not working as the original intention. I don't see that the consignors and consignees are in that chain strong enough to what they actually should be. And I'm saying this kindly to them as well, because it's been new legislation for them. So they've had to experience some big challenges too with their organisations. But I think the numbers are something like 37 prosecutions to consignors and consignees. Certainly not the case for the driver behind the wheel. Fatigue, we affirmed that we don't believe fatigue should have three standards. And I think there needs to be a lot more credit given to the industry themselves. The demographics of our transport industry is over 50. Most of those people have been driving trucks for a lot of years. And if you speak to any of them, they certainly throw around the challenge of the work diary, and that issue's been there for 10 years. And calling when they stop, when they don't stop, I personally think it's been quite a stressful scenario for drivers to have to operate on a work diary. And I think if we actually gave them a little bit more flexibility and allowed them to own the responsibility, they will pull up if they're tired. They want to go home as well. So that's a huge problem. With the electronic work diary coming into that, I've got serious concerns about the electronic work diary, and those concerns are that everyone jump on board, more technology the better. Let's just load up the vehicle with technology, load up the truck driver with more technology to be tracked. But the technology that we already have has not improved road safety, and we know that firmly. The stats are there. We give him an electronic work diary, or her, and next thing you know, they are trying to find a park and bay to pull up if they're long distance. And I speak really comfortably on this because I do Adelaide Darwin or Adelaide Perth, and there has been times where you really want to pull up in a park and bay and you just can't find one. So in the enforcement behind the electronic work diary, I don't think we know enough, and we need to watch it. What's that going to look like? Is it going to be flog the driver with a low tolerance of 3 to 10 minutes, push of a button, and then he's got another fine? So the work diary, the paperwork diary, has most certainly been used as an enforcement and fine tool, and I don't think it's done anything whatsoever to improve how the operator operates. Next thing is licences. Licences, I've actually seen firsthand where people will pay for a licence, and I have actually asked people to hand licences back. They've got an MC licence and they have not even hopped into a prime mover, and that is absolutely terrifying. At UTG, we have every intention of pushing really hard to get the transport industry as not negotiable for traineeship. Part of our issue dishing out licences has been the skill shortage, and we get that. However, that doesn't mean we should be taking a shortcut and not doing the formal training. So the traineeships need to be an absolute compulsory part of the industry moving forward. The freight movement is always under pressure, and certainly you look at a transport or a truck operator, that you have a carpenter who does a 4-year apprenticeship. He uses a drop saw, a toolkit, builds houses, climbs on the roof. We've got people pushing them into our industry absolutely flat out in a lethal weapon with 100 tonne, and we're expecting them to actually know this when we don't give them the time. Oh, hurry up, get your bag, get ready, you got to go, you got an MC licence, don't you, away you go. Has he learnt proper load restraint? No, there's the guy, but there's also over and above stronger training that we can give them. I've driven two up a lot, and you certainly see that, and with some young people learning to drive triples, and I can comfortably say there's the impatience in the industry for us to teach people, and we need to stop that. And part of that is the pushing of the fast-moving freight, and it's about the bottom line and the dollar. So when you're out there doing 100 kilometres an hour in a road train yourself, and you've got someone coming at you with 100 tonne on, and you can see that they're not holding their side of the road too steady, or you don't have a shoulder on the road to go to, it is quite scary. And I think we're actually too blasé as an industry. The national system, I've got a big view on that because I was part of the founding group in New South Wales RMS that developed what should a national system look like. And the national system isn't there, it's broken, it's not working, still from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, they're still having to check different routes, different regulations, and is everybody that is doing the enforcing on the same page? So I think there's a lot of dysfunctional stuff going on with that, changing signs at borders, for road trains or long vehicles. The white elephant in the room is certainly the freight rates. 10 years ago, inside a government, we actually were working on what we felt as a regulator freight rates should look like. Absolute believer that we need to have a regulator on that, and that regulator needs to have some pretty big teeth, and it actually needs to use its powers when it's required. Part of that is there a backload? No, absolutely not. That is probably one of the most frustrating terms I think I ever hear, and all of the industry that we are talking to, and we're all in industry, so we're talking to mountains of people, rates is very high on the agenda. And from my regulatory background, there is absolutely no one that'll convince me without really strong evidence that rates doesn't have a huge impact on fatigue and vehicle maintenance standards. The first thing that'll drop will be push harder and get there quicker to get the money. And the next thing will be, I can't repair that on my vehicle, I'll do that next trip because I don't have the cash flow. Part of that cash flow is that our country has been built on small operators and subcontractors, and we are pushing them to the absolute limit in some cases. And some people are being paid 60, 90 days from larger operators and consignors and consignees arrangements. It's absolutely not good enough. I mean, you're talking thousands of dollars just in diesel and fuel, and especially if they're, well, no matter where they're running anyway. So my view on the rates, I would really like to work on that. Over-regulated. Enforcement, I'll say this, I say very honestly, but it's about having the passion for it. We've been over-regulated for too long. And when you've got a demographic of a workforce of over 50, why are we still using it as a revenue raiser instead of helping them grow their businesses, grow the talent that is attracted in? When you're hearing drivers get a $700 fine off a logbook work diary, honestly, that's half his pay. Where would his stress level go? immediately through the roof. They've been having Spurs accounts, a lot of them that I know for years. The other thing is routes. I think that we're missing the point for our freight strategy nationally on our rail. If someone pays to pull a B-triple up the Hume Highway because he has the money to pay and look at the engineering of the road, and all the roads have that information within inside every jurisdiction in transport, why is that not open to everybody? Why are we sort of making people get Class 1 permits? Why are we making them jump hoops to actually help with that freight strategy? So the routes is a problem, and there's two sections to how I feel the issue, and that's the driver is certainly got issues, and then we have the business owners, and they're quite two different market groups that we need to look at and support how we fix what is broken. Permits again. You know, if a vehicle has travelled on a road out in a council environment, why does it take 2 or 3 months to get a permit through sometimes? And I've seen of recent this year, 3 months waiting for a federal government Defence Force permit to be approved until I went to the regulator and said, look, I'm here to help this company, and it's been sitting in here 3 months. So what is that doing to a business? Registrations for business owners, smaller operators, and we're talking the country is built on smaller and medium businesses. If he has a combination with one trailer, registration 5,000, as soon as he wants to hook up a road train, he's up to about 15,000. It is absolutely outrageous. If that truck is rated to pull 100 or 115 tonnes, why are we not allowing that vehicle to have a registration that is flat, that moves the volume of freight that a region requires it? I mean, look in farming. I'm from Kimber region, and, you know, at this time of the year, of course they want to have bigger combination. Middle times of the year, they don't need it. I know they can stop and start their registrations, but why do we need to have that sort of red tape overlaying it? We've done some surveys, and our drivers that we're talking to, they certainly have highlighted delays in loading and unloading. Book them into an appointment like a doctor. You will be here. If you don't get here at exactly 7 o'clock and you're half hour late, 2,000 kilometres later, we will put you to the back of the line. And it still happens. It still has a culture about that. Talk about hourly rates and kilometre rates for drivers. I think the kilometre rate for a driver has had its day. I think we should be looking at hourly rates for drivers, because that still impacts on road safety, because every driver is rushing to get the kilometres under their belt, and we'll push, and we'll sometimes use the work diary as a book of lies if it means getting there quicker and getting home, and it's actually the way they are paid. So if they break down or they're loading and unloading, sometimes they get paid for it, sometimes they don't. But I'm a firm believer that the kilometre rate payment to an employee should be probably looked at being put out the door now. But safety is the priority. Consignors and consignees in the chain of responsibility, I think they have come a really long way in the past number of years since COR was put into the market. However, I still believe that if they can take the opportunity to push a rate down or to push a customer in transport to be there much quicker, why have we got two up teams? And that is the pressure of when the product is to be there. We believe with the volume of accidents, and I've been talking to the insurance companies as well, and they certainly understand and agree that the accidents and fatalities is not acceptable at all. And if you had this sort of fatalities within other industry organisations, they would be jumping up and down, and they'd probably have some stop work issues going on at different environments or places. So the accident investigations, I think, needs to look at having a model of a standalone unit that is absolutely specialised, instead of just saying, oh, the driver's probably tired. There's a whole heap of factors, and I've done the investigations myself. And the first place I go is what sort of training have they had and what pressure have they been put under by anybody in the chain. And the payment terms and conditions, I've followed off on that for owner operators. And I'd like to bring up the fuel tax. Farmers in our country as primary production have always been given a heavy discount on fuel tax. Some trucks do, depending on the route they go, but why can't we as a country look at, they're probably using 20 or 30 billion litres of diesel a year, and I've got those numbers from fuel companies. Why can't we look at cutting them a little bit of slack when they do have a huge lot of expenses? Mental health, I think we have absolutely undermeasured the mental health. These people driving trucks are putting in long hours. They are leaving their families. Families these days have different structures to that of when I grew up. So there's those social issues that come in with the mental health and the culture within the industry. I've travelled throughout myself, and I'll say, oh no, I think we need to just have a little half-hour break here and get out the truck. And predominantly it's been male drivers that have been in the industry a long time, and they go, oh my God, we can't stop. Like, they actually still have this culture that they cannot be 5 minutes late. And we need to cut them some slack and speak up for that. Infrastructure on roads, well, that in itself is part of my electronic work diary argument. The roads are just not in order, condition-wise, and parking bays to actually start enforcing hard, and it will happen unless people watch the regulator. But, you know, some of these roads, we're dropping down to 80 and 90 kilometres an hour out there, and we are also struggling to find parking bays that give you that quality. So the distance in between is just too much, and there's no facilities at all. I've had drivers text messaging me non-stop saying, well, we're not animals. We have no toilets. So we need to certainly push at that. And people, you know, Coolgardie to Southern Cross, I drive it myself with a road train, and I'll be sitting on 85, 90, and I'll have drivers up behind me saying, I'll just say, come around, I'm not going any faster than that. They have a culture that they are worried to actually drop their speed, probably a bit of an ego thing. My comment is, come around because I'm not getting paid enough to drop the load or tip over. So they go, why don't we all speak up? And I think that's something we need to actually put within the industry. The attraction of new young people. We've already got a young next-gen group that we've started up, and there's a young female in that group, and she's early 20s. She drives B-doubles, and I can say she has actually taken 2 years to be able to crack into the industry for anyone to give her a go. And she's had to learn the hard way, and there's a number of females in the industry and a number of young guys that really want to be in the industry, but we don't actually give them an opportunity. And with the skill shortage that we have in this sector, we should be welcoming anyone new that wants to come in with open arms and nurture them through proper training, proper licences. What sort of impact is being had on our industry with accidents? And I don't think we can actually measure that. because the impact on families, when you're talking the volumes of fatalities, I don't know the exact number, but I think this year it's something in the vicinity of well over 100, which is not good enough at all. So in my summary, we're a lobby group and we intend on being very, very strong in the way we see things. We have industry sector groups that will stand up and unpack different regulations. So some of the things that I want to change is COR, freight rates, fatigue and driver burnout. Like I've been in compliance for years, and our burnout rate in the industry is, 5 years? We got truckies 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So mental health, the culture within the industry, the technology, we've got cameras on our eyes and I've driven with them and I'm not against them. Cameras down the sides, the fronts, the electronic work diary. Probably next step is microchip the driver.
Don't joke about it, Roxy. It might just happen.
Yeah.
All right, Roxy, can we go to some questions?
Yeah.
Thank you, because we are short of time, but we want to hear. And look, the issues around the nation are all the same. There's no argument.
They are indeed.
A couple of things that you talked on, and I just want to raise before I go to Senator McDonald. And you talk about pay rates, you know, you said 60, 90 days. I'm in receipt of a major user of transport in this nation who shall remain nameless, who shifts thousands of tonnes a week. They've got their transport company on 150 days. So,
oh, God.
Yeah,
so imagine the mental health in that aspect.
Well, you've got to put it this way, there's not many companies that can do that, that can carry
exactly.
that. And no one seems to carry that debt. But let's talk a little bit about the training stuff, because we are ex-road, well, I'm ex-road trained, you're still doing it. And the way I learnt was completely different how it is now, and I reckon the way I learnt was the better way, but anyway. Going back to a previous Senate inquiry, I'd like to get your thoughts around this, that this committee did. We uncovered the exploitation of the training system, and we wrote a report with recommendations, and one of the recommendations is that in this nation, if a man or woman goes and gets their MC licence, that they don't have to do any MC driving, they can hold that licence for 12 months and then bugger me. After 12 months, they then can become, Cert 3, train the trainer, and go out there and teach young men and women how to operate MC vehicles, platforms, triple road trains, double road. I mean, for crying, I'd use the F word then, for crying. Okay, what's UTG? Let's give me, what would UTG do if you were in the room with the decision makers to say, for crying out loud, what the hell are you doing?
Okay, so my way previous life is in education, and I set up all the vetting schools for Canberra. I've set up university internship programs. I ran all the TAFEs across the Kimberleys. And what we have and was actually running the TAFEs when ASQA came in, so a very strong background in training. What would I say is that people that are not in government forcing our industry to have traineeships and proper training, they should be having a good hard look at how they get their shopping on the table. And I think it is as blunt as that. Handing out licences to people that have no experience in a truck at all, you're pretty much giving them a death wish. And I think it is just that far out there that they should be actually prosecuted for it.
Well, this one, Roxy, this is worse. This is the ones who've had no experience delivering the training. And tomorrow we're going to hear from a magnificent leader in the industry, Heather Jones from Karratha, and this is her passion. It's not as though we haven't...
100%.
The tools are there, just we're going to shake the legislators to wake up and start realising that not everyone in Parliament knows what they're talking about in certain industries, and they should listen to other people. Roxy,
well, Heather and I have been having conversations to work together.
Yep, she's back.
She is.
So also, just maybe a couple of things I just want to touch on. When you talked about a regulator with big teeth, you said the white elephant, and I know exactly what that certainly the elephant in the room on the rates. So with UTG's membership, and I know it's varied between owner operators and small business and large business. From a small operator's point of view or the owner driver's point of view, what would a regulator look like, and what would be its powers? You talk about.
So I've got a regulator head. What would it look like? We would actually know what it costs per kilometre to run a vehicle, and dare anybody drop the price on that one. And I just think there's an absolute bottom line of selling people's souls that the regulator should actually get in the know of, because that is what's causing fatigue and maintenance issues. And the big teeth, if a consignor or consignee or another transport company, a large one or small one, that's passing on the freight, a freight forwarder, straight up, first offence, if they've been notified of what that benchmark is of a rate, they should be prosecuted. And it should actually fit in under chain of responsibility and make the chain work well.
Rather than the chain keep smashing the driver.
Correct. And you know me a long time, and I'm absolutely going to say it. The driver is dead set at the pin cushion, and he is dead set the centre of chain of responsibility. And everybody gets him to sign or clock in and has his vehicle tracked and him tracked now on a electronic work diary. He's the one. And when accident investigations are happening, that's the first place that a lot of people are jumping, because usually those investigation team come from police or the regulator or transport. And to be fair, I've trained, or in my unit's trained, all the New South Wales Police and the councils. They can't know everything. And the accident is far bigger than the driver making a mistake. There was another fatality last night, up at Council on the Bruce Highway.
Okay.
61 and a 64-year-old. I mean, we
truck drivers.
Hey?
Truck drivers.
Yep, to head on. And that, so what's going on? I mean, the regulator does need to look at rates, and I think that's one of the major priorities that needs to be jumped all over.
Okay, so Roxy, what I'll do, and no argument, we could go for hours, but I do want to give Senator McDonald an opportunity because we have run over time. And I will put on notice, Senator McDonald, with your indulgence, we were going to break from, now I'm using your time, 1:30 to 2:30. Senator McDonald, would you be comfortable if we just went from 2 o'clock to 2:30? You're on mute. There you go. Yeah.
Well, that would be fine. I think otherwise we will run out of time for the other witnesses, so that would be fine with me. Thank you.
All right. So, Senator McDonald, did you want to ask any questions of Roxy? Because I've got, so I can keep going, but I'd like to pass to you.
Yes, thank you, and I won't take too long. Thank you very much for the evidence you've given today, and I was sorry that you hadn't had time to do a submission. I appreciate that your organisation's only started fairly recently, and but you've been very fulsome in what you've just talked through. Can I just understand? So you're mainly representing drivers, owner operators, or transport businesses. What's your membership base?
Okay, our membership base is anyone that's a driver or owns a transport company. We intend on expanding to consignors and consignees because my background in Home Affairs for 12 months and Ag Department last year for Canberra, I'm a change manager and risk mitigation. That's what I do. And so for me, I don't believe that we can fix the COR without being inclusive to everybody in the chain and getting them to understand what their decisions impact. Yeah. So at the moment, transport operators and drivers.
Thank you. You talked about a driver apprenticeship. Can you just talk me through, because it's been raised with me too as I'm going around Queensland.
Yeah.
Can you just talk me through how you envisage the idea of an apprenticeship for drivers working in your view?
Well, insurance has been a major issue in transport companies for a very long time, with an age bracket at 25, and I believe that insurance companies are getting that a little bit more user-friendly now with excesses and things like that for younger. What it would look like is like I set up the vet in schools originally for Canberra and the school-based apprenticeships. There is absolutely no reason that we should be offering vocational education for year 10, 11 and 12s at like 16, 17-year-olds to work in a depot 1 or 2 days a week around the freight movement. And what does that look like as far as loading trucks? And understand, like Glenn said, I learned to drive at a very young age because I had parents in it. But that some of these people don't, and we're cutting off great resources to our skills. So I would certainly have it as a 3 to 4 year apprenticeship traineeship. It would be an extremely structured program. It would be modelled on what we already have in ASCOT as far as other qualifications, not shortcutting, but as they come out of school, if they want to start early, we should let them start early. And then when they want to work full time, we actually need to have high quality trainers. And I don't believe that the training sector has had an abundance of that, but we certainly do have a lot of national ones. So it would be 4 years working inside road restraint, how to look after a vehicle, basic maintenance of a vehicle, do some work inside with a workshop. They do need to have some hands on there, especially long distance, understand what it means with the dangerousness of changing a tyre, and then progress through a heavy rigid, through to a HC, through to an MC, and they should be put in as a tour for an X amount of time with another experienced operator. So they get to learn and watch, and that's how they do learn.
Yeah. So Mr. Shearer, as part of his evidence just before you, talked about the concept with forklift operators that because we've got a nationalised age limit now of 18, that they were proposing that the state, that you'd be able to have these apprenticeships that are operated under the state legislation, so you would allow this truck driving apprenticeship to start when people were 16, but limit them to that operation. Do you think that would work?
I think 16 is very young, myself. I'd probably like to be looking more at the 17 to the 18-year-old before we actually put them on some of the equipment, particularly if they haven't had any exposure to it. If they come from a farm, they'll probably drive on it since they're 10. You know, if they've come from a trucking family, they would have been around it all their life. But I think we need to look at, allow it to be competency-based and not put an age on it.
Okay, terrific. And finally, I just had a question for you on enforceable minimum award rates. Senator Sterle and I come across this issue of rates, in agriculture and in dairy and other industries.
Yeah.
There is a clear retailer at the end of the food chain.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, can you just give me some more information on how you think that the increased costs would affect the viability of particularly smaller members in your organisation, the smaller operators?
Yeah. You mean as in wage rates? Are you talking?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it would affect them a lot. And here we are, back to the white elephant plan. The freight rate. If you don't get the right freight rate, you're not going to be able to pay the right hourly rate. And you use the mining sector. I mean, they've obviously got really good contracts. They get good money for what they do. they pay drivers in some of those regions far more than what a highway truck driver gets. But they could be doing a quad tipper, same thing, 700 kilometres in a round circle. So the impact it has on a small operator is actually massive if we're not got a regulator with some teeth for the freight rates to not drop under what is actually profitable for a business to run. We are pushing people that own businesses into pushing drivers to do more hours and unload and load without having that hourly rate paid because they don't have the finances in the freight rate.
I'm just trying to understand the difference between a smaller operation that has, the wage rate will be a big portion of their expenses, as opposed to a bigger trucking operation that'll be able to,
absorb it.
Yeah, exactly. What would happen then to a competition between, family businesses and big corporate businesses?
Yeah, 100%. Our country's been built on smaller operators and subcontractors, and a lot of freight that's still moved around the country is by smaller operators. And I would classify smaller operators under 50 trucks, but they are still pressure cooker. You get someone with 100 or 600 trucks, much different cash flows, but longevity of being able to do the right thing if it continues with the pressure of freight rates, and I'm speaking freight rates really firm for owners. That is our biggest complaint from industry, and it is just over and over and over. So, and the cost of combination registration, and being able to look at different routes. So it doesn't hinge on one thing. If they can pull 2 trailers with a lot more tonnage, then that's not quite so much pressure for the owner operator. If they're pulling a B double, well, it's less payload. So it really is a whole combination of registrations, routes, rates. We need to get that right so the drivers are looked after, and it does then eliminate some of the actual competition in the market. It's a fair point.
I'm sorry to interrupt. So you just mentioned the registration cost. What about insurance? In northern Queensland, we've got a real challenge with getting insurance for all sorts of businesses. Have you seen that in the trucking industry as well?
100%. Insurances, tyre or fuel, fuel payments, and registrations are huge costs. And insurances, we were starting to work with insurance companies, and it is about sustainability, and they need to understand that there's a big impact from their cost or on their excesses or the location in which vehicles are going. So, but we can't tell an insurance company either what they can charge. It's a very big can of worms that needs to have some really strong, very uncomfortable and hard discussions in rooms.
Well, particularly for refrigerated trucks, that's the feedback I'm getting here, is that that's becoming very expensive if you can get insurance at all. But I'll leave it there because I know the Chair's got questions as well, and I've taken them over time. But thank you, Chair. Thank you, Roxanne.
Thanks, Senator Gold. So, Roxy, I just want to clear one thing with a couple of minutes we've got left. And trust me, I'm not being paranoid, but we do know that certain officers within the ACCC troll through all sorts of things. And there's the odd ACCC inspector who may jump on your previous statement where you said something about like reducing competition. I know you didn't mean that, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I think that I can safely say before this officer gets all excited where he can threaten you with anything, was that we have no problem competition in the transport industry, but what we do want is a fair playing field, correct?
Fair playing field. And all of my conversation around these issues today is all about a fair playing field. Even fatigue. I mean, if you've got companies that are pushing drivers way beyond the days straight that they should be working, that also impacts. If someone's giving them a day off every week and someone's not giving their driver a day off for every couple of weeks, of course that impacts on the fair playing field. So all of this is about the fair playing field and a fair go for the hard Aussie working families out there. And my view of the transport industry, you know, four-wheel blend, I've grown up in it. I drive road trains myself. I love getting out there and out of the corporate world and, you know, talking to the souls of what I see as our country. Not one of these people in our community could survive without trucking, and I think that is the biggest part about giving a fair playing field.
Spot on, Roxy, and with 60 seconds, you kicked over a can of worms or an ant nest, because you have my full support on this one. It will create a lot of conversation around the country and its backloading rates, because we know that Shell and BP they only charge half the cost when we're heading north as opposed
Exactly.
Okay, absolutely wonderful. Roxy, on the short, thank you so much for your time. Keep up the good work there with UTG. I look forward to catching up with you when the COVID curtains come down, hopefully sooner than later. Take care, pass on my best to your members.
And that's the thing with the industry. I mean, look at the pressure they've been under this year in 2020 with COVID, and absolutely hats off to the people working in transport.
Yeah, well, you won't get an argument from Senator McDonald and myself. And you know, the best part about the only shining light about COVID is politicians now recognise the trucking industry as essential workers. Isn't that wonderful? So, on that,
and I'm from government too, so for me, I'm actually smiling and saying, you know what, the upside to COVID is that hopefully the truckies get the recognition that they actually deserve as frontline workers. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. All right, Roxy, on behalf of the committee, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and we'll take, yes.
Thank you, Senator Susan McDonald, for your time as well.
Senator McDonald's on mute. On mute she was.
Good to see you talking, Susan.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, take care, Roxy. Okay, bye. We will now suspend for 30 minutes and recommence at your time, which should be 2:30, with the TWU South Australian Northern Territory branch. Thank you.
Well done. Thanks. See you later.